The news hit like a thunderclap, reverberating through the heart of Manila and echoing across the world. It was a moment that would be remembered for generations, a single decision that changed the course of a nation's future. On September 17, 2025, the Philippines made a historic move, cutting strategic ties with China after years of mounting tension and failed negotiations. Headlines blared across every screen and newspaper. Philippines cuts strategic ties with China. The world's attention was instantly fixed on Manila. Another headline screamed, Marcos Jr. orders full review of all Beijing-backed projects. The message was unmistakable. The era of quiet compromise was over. The announcement, delivered in a stern and resolute address from Malacañang Palace, marked the end of years of tension, broken promises, and simmering resentment over the South China Sea. The president's words carried the weight of a nation's frustration and hope. The world watched in real time as Manila stood up to a global superpower, defying expectations and rewriting the rules of engagement in Southeast Asia. The break was more than a diplomatic maneuver. It was a bold declaration of defiance, a line drawn in the sand after years of compromise and disappointment. For years, Manila had tried to walk a tightrope, balancing the lure of Chinese investments and infrastructure with the urgent need to defend its sovereignty and protect its people. But the rope finally snapped under the strain of repeated provocations and unfulfilled promises. The shockwaves from Manila's decision forced a global recalibration of power in the region. Allies and rivals alike scrambled to reassess their strategies, knowing that the balance of power in Southeast Asia had shifted overnight. That very morning, as the world digested the news, a Philippine Coast Guard vessel on a routine resupply mission was shadowed by 5 imposing Chinese ships, a familiar scene that had played out countless times before. But this time, the Filipino captain stood firm, refusing to be intimidated. The crew's resolve mirrored the new spirit sweeping the nation, a spirit of resistance and unity. Years of harassment at sea, lost livelihoods, and viral videos of Chinese aggression had pushed the nation to the brink. The stories of ordinary fishermen, whose lives were upended by foreign encroachment, became rallying cries for change. The government's decision was forged in the fires of public anger as citizens took to the streets demanding action and accountability from their leaders. It was also shaped by the desperation of coastal communities, whose daily struggles and fading hopes could no longer be ignored. Their voices, once drowned out by political rhetoric, finally broke through. The break with Beijing was not just a policy shift, it was the roar of a nation pushed too far, finally pushing back with all its might, determined to reclaim its dignity and future, no matter the cost. Manila's message to the world was clear and unwavering. Sovereignty is not for sale, and the Filipino spirit will not be broken. The South China Sea was once a shared lifeline for millions, a crossroads of trade and culture. But the discovery of oil and gas transformed it into a battleground. China's sweeping 9-line claim dismissed its neighbors and international law. The sea became a global chessboard, with warships replacing fishing boats. For the Philippines, this was an existential threat, felt in empty nets and lost reefs. Chinese island building and militarization destroyed traditional livelihoods. What was once a source of life became a symbol of intimidation and anxiety. The calm blue waters had become a frontier of conflict, setting the stage for Manila's bold stand. On September 17, 2025, President Marcos Jr. delivered a historic verdict that would echo across the region and the world. In a bold and unprecedented move, he declared that the Philippines would no longer tolerate China's aggression in the West Philippine Sea, sending a clear message to both Beijing and the international community. Marcos Jr. spoke of years of harassment faced by Filipino fishermen, ignored diplomatic protests, and a long list of broken promises that had eroded trust between the two nations. He acknowledged that countless rounds of diplomatic talks had failed to yield results, and that attempts at appeasement had only emboldened Beijing's increasingly aggressive actions in disputed waters. In response, Marcos Jr. announced a decisive shift from cautious engagement to assertive defense, instructing the military to document every act of Chinese coercion and to present undeniable evidence to the world. Behind the scenes, Quiet but firm assurances from allies like the United States and Japan gave the Philippines the confidence to take this stand, knowing they would not be alone if tensions escalated. The government immediately suspended all China-funded infrastructure projects, launching a comprehensive review of every economic and diplomatic tie with Beijing, signaling a major policy shift. With this announcement, the era of strategic ambiguity officially ended, replaced by a new era of clarity and resolve in defending national interests. The Philippines drew a literal and symbolic line in the water, choosing to defend its sovereignty and maritime rights over accepting empty promises and continued intimidation. It was a bold and risky gamble, but one that united the nation. The Filipino people stood ready to face the uncertain future together, determined to protect their home and their dignity. The government's move was powered by a groundswell of public support. Streets erupted in celebration, not protest. Filipinos united under the banner, Atin ang Pinas. Social media spread viral images of fishermen harassed and Coast Guard crews under attack, making the conflict personal. Civic groups, students, and business leaders demanded a tougher stance. Fishermen's stories of lost income and fear became a rallying cry. The government responded to an undeniable mandate from its people. National pride surged, giving Marcos Jr. the political capital to act. The Filipino people refused to trade dignity for dollars. The break with China was as much a victory for grassroots activism as for presidential resolve. The Philippines and China share centuries of history, but recent years saw that friendship unravel. Duterte's pivot to China promised a golden age of investment and prosperity. Billions were pledged for railways and bridges, but most projects stalled or never materialized. Filipinos grew wary as economic promises faded and Chinese labor replaced local jobs. On the water, China's actions contradicted its rhetoric. Maritime militia swarmed reefs, while diplomats spoke of partnership. The economic bonanza never arrived. Trust eroded. The relationship felt one-sided, with sovereignty traded for empty promises. China's hypocrisy became impossible to ignore. The foundation of trust crumbled, paving the way for the break. The Sino-Filipino dream had become a cautionary tale. At the heart of the conflict was the BRP Sierra Madre, a rusting ship grounded on Ayungin Shoal. Filipino Marines endured harsh conditions, their lifeline threatened by China's escalating tactics. Water cannon attacks and near collisions were captured on video, shocking the nation. The David versus Goliath imagery galvanized public outrage. The Marines became national heroes, the ship a symbol of defiance. Public pressure forced the government to abandon quiet diplomacy for transparency and confrontation. By exposing China's aggression, Manila rallied both domestic and international support. The battle for a single ship ignited a revolution in foreign policy. Ayungin Shoal became the spark that changed everything. The break wasn't just about sovereignty, it was about economic disillusionment. China's promised investments rarely materialized. Flagship projects stalled or were abandoned. Loan terms favored Chinese firms, offering little benefit to Filipinos. Meanwhile, Japan and Western partners delivered steady, reliable aid. China's Belt and Road looked more like a tool for leverage than real development. Fears of a debt trap grew. Manila realized true security required diverse, transparent partnerships. Cutting ties was as much an economic pivot as a political one. Manila's break with China was matched by a return to old allies. The US-Philippine alliance was revitalized, with joint military exercises and expanded base access. Japan provided defense equipment and support, while Australia and European partners joined maritime patrols. The Philippines embedded itself in a network of democracies, raising the stakes for any aggressor. An attack on a Philippine vessel now meant confronting Washington, Tokyo, and Canberra. This web of alliances shifted the regional balance of power. The Philippines was no longer alone. Integrated deterrence complicated China's calculus. Manila turned geographic vulnerability into strategic strength. The Philippines became the linchpin of a new Indo-Pacific security architecture. The break with Beijing brought a surge of national pride and a wave of anxiety that swept across the country. For many Filipinos, it was a moment of long-awaited assertion, a chance to reclaim their voice on the world stage. But beneath the celebrations, uncertainty lingered. Critics quickly warned of possible economic retaliation, fearing that trade and investment could suffer. There were also deep concerns about the risk of military conflict as tensions in the region escalated and the threat of confrontation loomed larger than ever. Some feared the Philippines had become a frontline state in a great power rivalry, caught between competing interests of global superpowers. The South China Sea, already a flashpoint, now seemed even more volatile. The presence of foreign troops on Philippine soil sparked heated debate about sovereignty and security. Was this a necessary shield or a new form of dependence? Politicians, experts, and ordinary citizens all weighed in, their voices filling the airwaves and the streets. Yet, for most Filipinos, the government's bold move was seen as an act of self-preservation, not provocation. It was about protecting livelihoods, defending families, and ensuring a future free from intimidation. Inaction, they argued, would mean the slow, silent loss of sovereignty. One fishing ground, one village, one right at a time. The cost of doing nothing was simply too high. Standing up to a bully, they believed, was the only way to command respect and secure a place in the world. Courage, not compromise, would define the nation's future. The Philippines showed the world that even small nations, when united and determined, can shape the global order and inspire others to do the same. On October 6, 2025, the country chose to stand tall, reclaim its destiny, and send a message of hope and resilience to the world. Manila's message was clear. The tide of history can be turned by the brave, and the future belongs to those who dare to shape it.